want you to know that we're interested in continuing this movement, if you will, in and we've gotten a great start to begin with our morning session. And these presenters have known them longer than I've known them. I'm going to briefly introduce them and then let them give you a fuller introduction. Johanna Pozo is a psychologist, neuropsychologist.
Yes, I'm a neuroscientist.
Okay, neuroscientist. And our next presenter is Carlos Ramirez, I think well known by many of you, if not all. And then we have Dr. Edwin Urresta, who is the brains and the motivator and the completer of Las Lomas in Quito, which is up and running. And to go from idea to completion, he deserves a lot of credit. And finally, we have Dr. Gabriel Tenorio, who I also think is well known by most. So I'm not going to hold you up. I'm Connie Scudilli. But let's turn it over, and shall we begin first with Dr. Urresta Edwin, who is the brains behind this meeting, as well as Club Lomas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. On behalf of Club Lomas, I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for coming to this important event. I would like to say that Club Lomas is a private company that is spearheading a little of what is the senior living industry in Ecuador. Club Lomas was born as a personal interest and a personal concern when I saw that my parents were aging, and one asks, what will they do? Where will they go? What are the options? I am by training a lawyer, but I've been in international development and consulting for about 30 years. That has given me the opportunity to know many places, many people, and to work on many special social projects regarding vulnerable groups and many different things that really matter. All that together with the need of my parents took me to believe that it was necessary to analyze the situation in Ecuador, because obviously you have probably seen in your countries that the senior living industry has been ongoing for 60 years or so. That has given the opportunity to develop options, products, to worry about the older adults, to develop governmental policy and many other aspects. But in Ecuador, we're pretty much 60 years behind, unfortunately. Because while in the States you did start with this, to look at this 60 years ago, you probably may have seen that in Ecuador this is relatively a new concept. It still hasn't been addressed, and there is no dialogue at a national level as to how to deal with this reality. So Club Lomas has begun with its first project in Cotacachi. It's an hour and a half north of Quito, and we have been working on that for about 7 years now. It's been a large and complex process. We had to start from the conception of the project. We had to visit projects in other countries. We had to get support from specialists who know about the industry. Then we had to design, we had to do market studies, we had to do a lot of work. And then actually building and operating Club Lomas has been a great experience, challenging a bit, but it's been very, very nice and very successful. Club Lomas opened almost a year ago, so we have started now to operate. We have our first guests living there. And of course, our view is to go beyond the project. We understand that there is a need to promote conversation. There is a need to identify peers, people we can work with, professionals, advocacy and groups, and maybe even at some point form some type of national association. Because all you will find now in Ecuador are really, smaller experiences, people that are renting homes and adapting them for the purpose of serving 6, 8, up to 10 older adults without a purpose-built facility, without all the support that needs to go into that. And we firmly believe Club Lomas is the first of its kind in Ecuador. So thank you very much for your interest. We're going to share today with our colleagues on the panel a few aspects regarding aging. We understand that a lot of them are common sense, but common sense is scarce, right? So it's good to remember and to go over things that we really need to think about. So with that said, as Connie indicated, first I would like to thank Johanna, who I guess most of you know. She has been instrumental and fantastic in helping us organize this event and many other things. It's been our moderator, Connie, has been wonderful, also supporting us with this endeavor. And all those involved, especially our panelists, for taking their time and helping us. So this is going to be hopefully a series of webinars and in-person events. We've had a couple of webinars. These are presented in English and Spanish. Our targets are expats and Ecuadorians, and we will continue to work on this with more detail in the future. Having said that, I will briefly give you an overview of what we see is happening in terms of retiring and aging generally. As you probably know, the tendency worldwide is that we're starting to invert the pyramid, the age pyramid. We're getting more and more older adults and less younger people. And that obviously brings a lot of different changes and complexities, social security systems that were developed post the Second World War. And of course, at that time, they say age expectancy was something like 69, 70 years of age. People retired at 65, so it was sensible to plan for 4 or 5 years of payments, right? But now the reality is different. Worldwide, we're about 80 years of age on average, which is life expectancy. I was saying in the morning, a few years ago, when I was still a young person, I remember reading as a big news that someone in China had reached the age of 100 years. That was about 40, 45 years ago. 100 years was worldwide news. One person got there. Well, now it's estimated there are something between 800,000 and 1 million persons worldwide that are 100 years old or more. In Ecuador alone, there are about 2,700 that have met that age. And as time goes by, age is progressing. We're living longer, but not necessarily better. And so we have to start thinking about that. A lot of things have to change, and we have to start worrying. So anyway, we believe that obviously the late stage of life, retirement, should be a time where you can enjoy your independence, where you can look after your interests, where you can have mental and physical well-being, and not look at it as has been the case in Ecuador mostly, that people reach a certain age and the family kind of, says, well, let's let them rest, let's let them be alone. And what you're actually doing is limiting the possibilities of those persons to have a full life. We can easily live well, we can live better, we can live longer. But if we are still part of a community if we still use our social interaction, if we also have activities, mental, physical, and most of all, that we have community. Current situations in Ecuador are now similar to those like in the States, Canada, Europe, where all the family is busy. Husband and wife are working, children are studying, everybody's leaving. People are now not living in the same city. So, what happens with the elders? It's not the family that can look after them. We have to change that mindset. We have to start considering that they need an option, that they need opportunities for a better life. We want them to share their wisdom, to enhance and use their social skills. And for people to be successful, they need to plan and they need to organize their well being. Learning about aging is natural. It's natural because there are a lot of uncertainties. Our bodies are changing. There are different situations which worry us. But the best way to approach that is to understand, to all join in and find a way to deal with it. We can propose solutions, we can propose alternatives, but we have to start by understanding what that process is, what will be coming, what to expect. And so we need planning, we need to understand, and we also need options. What can we do? And that's where Ecuador is unfortunately way behind. The best way to reduce anxiety, to improve your life, is of course to have lifestyle changes that make it better. We can certainly improve our life by the lifestyle we adopt. Many of us don't do that, and we want to stay in the past and don't acknowledge the need to change. Proper medication, proper therapy, prevention, and of course, community. Those are essential. There are many concerns. There are many, and I'm sure you can think of more. But we've got basically three areas: health concerns, social concerns, and others. On health, obviously, chronic diseases, cognitive decline, physical changes, mobility, falls. That's a very complicated problem. And nutritional problems. Sometimes we don't think about that. When people are living alone, they'll say, I'll just get a bite or I'll get something I like or I won't eat. And what they're actually doing is making it worse for them. So we should realize, and that's part of the loneliness many times, and isolation. So social concerns, again, isolation, loneliness, not enough mental and physical activities, and most of all, loss of purpose. Once you have reached a certain age, you feel like, that's it, I did my thing, there's nothing more to follow up. And that's not true. There's a lot of things we can do for ourselves, for others. We can also be part of a larger community, not just the residential community, but the town. People that need help, people that need to learn from the elders where wisdom is. Right? And of course, things like financial security, finding appropriate care, end of life plans. So, what's going to happen? And especially if you are alone or you're living in as an expat, there are many people do worry and say, well, who's going to take care of me when the time comes? And while it seems that it's not here, it's a long way from now, still in the back of our minds, there's a concern. Well, how do we deal with that? So overall, in Ecuador, there's a need to consider the risks of living alone. I think we need to change that mindset. A lot of people say, I want to live in my house, I don't need anything, I don't need anyone, I'm happy. How true is that? Myths and realities about living in residences, communities, and homes for adults, especially the Ecuadorian mentality, doesn't consider that possible. They still see it as they're going to throw me away. I don't want that. The reality is it could be a much better lifestyle. People don't understand. Limited options that the country offers. There are very few ways that we'll see in a while that Ecuador can offer services. They're limited, in fact. Government needs to work on policy. We need to discuss concepts. We need to propose changes. And Club Residencial hopes that these series of conversations will help us form working groups, groups that together we can establish a dialogue and take action and find ways to address this as a community, as a society. And of course, there's limited investment, especially private, for this sector of the economy, which is a shame because it's a need and it's a service that could do well. It's an industry that can go well, but it's also a service that the country needs. With that, I will ask our colleague, Dr. Gabriel Tenorio, a lot of you know, to talk to us about the medical perspective. Thank you.
I like the easy one. Good afternoon with everyone. I think I know to 50% of the people here, and the other 50% maybe hate me. Let's see. Excuse me for my English. This is my second time giving a presentation in another language. I'm going to begin with the end. I'm going to talk today, it's the first time I hope we are going to have more meetings. We are going to talk about prevention. I think the first step to make a good prevention is have a contact with a doctor. It's very important because the doctor is going to help you to access and have a good access in the health system. In your turning, talking about you is very important because you do not know the system here in the country. It's very important to have a contact with the doctor and go with the doctor even if you are not sick. We need to open a file. We need your clinical file. We need to know your medical conditions because when you are going to be sick, we are going to know what medication are you using and what are your allergies and what are the things we could do to improve the condition sooner for you. Primary care physicians develop a complete detailed record of your health. And it's important to know even your habits. It is not the same thing give the treatment of a pneumonia to a patient who smoke or a patient who use oxygen at home. Have more difficult. And it's very important to have a contact, I repeat, even if you are not sick, with a doctor here in this country for you. We could detect with the clinic file, we could detect early problems, and based on your history, we could have even detect potential things to make preventions. I always push to my patients, for example, physios like the ladies from and the guy there, they are going to be with me. I used to send them to 100% of my patients. I told them, you have to make exercises. And they does not want. Maybe it is late to begin to make exercises. I have my grandmother, she's 93 years old, and she began 3 years ago at her 90s. And she's very good. Early detection is the most effective way to improve the prognosis of any illness. Your doctors, you have an advantage. If you have an emergency, you come to your doctors and he's going to know what is happening with you. It is not the same thing if a patient who has migraines call me and say, I have migraines again, and I could give the prescription by phone to have another patient who has high blood pressure or has another problems or vascular problems and call me to say, I have the terrible migraines of my life. It's different. Give a treatment by phone and tell to the other patients, I need to check you in emergency room. I have to make a test. And that is a problem. Emergency room is not the same like in Canada or like in the United States. The attention of emergency room in this country is personalized. Why? Because the doctor knows you. If you come to a doctor, I have a problem, and the doctor says, I'll give you 20 minutes. In 1 hour in emergency room, your doctor is going to be there. That's the way in which we work here. It's different. We could resolve the things in emergency in 1 hour or 2, not in 6 or 8 like used to be. No. Your doctors must, excuse me, you develop a trust-based relationship with your doctors, with confidence, remember, last time when I was a kid, the doctor has the last word. He told me I have to use this thing and I have to use these things. Now we could talk. It is a different doctor. We have to talk, and I have sometimes to convince to the patient he has to use this medication or another. I have, for example, problems with statins. Nobody wants to use the statins because that adverse effects and everything. But we have options, or we could use less doses or something. We could talk. If you have a doctor with confidence, you could talk. That's the message. Because you could feel more comfortable discussing your problems. In summary, your primary care doctors and the knowledge he has about you is fundamental to have early detections, good treatment, and help us to take decisions about your health. Everything that all the things we do is to improve and make the things faster for you. I think I finished.
And I thank you, and I know we all thank you, Dr. Tenorio. Muchas gracias. And now, notice there's a theme. It's a continuum of service providers, not just one place that you look for support and help when you're aging. So now let's talk to, I'm sure, another person all of you know, many of you know. I'd like to introduce Carlos Ramirez from Blue Box to those. Oh,
Johanna, presentation is.
okay. Delete everything I said after the rest. Just forget all of it. However, I will repeat now. This I want you to remember. Continuing the theme of continuity of care, we will now talk to or hear from Johanna Pozo. We will reinforce. Oh, great. Okay, go back 2 introductions. Wait, where are we? Okay. All right. I just want you all to know I was right the first time. Just in case you worried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the event. Familiar faces, a lot of clients, new faces too. Let me introduce myself really quickly. My name is Carlos Ramirez. I am an insurance server, not broker. I am serving the expert community for probably 13 years on the insurance market, serving the expert community with Blue Box, but around 17 or 18 years on the insurance market too. We are serving with Blue Box in Manta and Cuenca for almost, I don't know what happens, but I will continue. Let's see. Just a moment. That is the same. That is the current presentation. I don't know.
That's my
I don't know. Let me take a look if I can find mine, but probably is not there. Okay. Could we take a look probably and or put the Spanish version and we can practice the Spanish too? Let's see, because my presentation now is there. Just a minute. But, well, I will continue talking a little bit. As Blue Box, we are serving right now more than 2,000 expat clients. I have a lot of experience in health insurance, but today I want to talk not only about private insurance, also ISS is an option for insurance, and I will explain you why you can consider ISS. You need to consider that as an insurance broker, we can't represent somebody under ISS, but it's important that you know how it works and probably is an option to consider too. We can work only with private insurance. Well, here we have a valuable team at your service. We have 6 bilingual persons at your service. And well, let's take a look about ISS. ISS have some advantage. You do not have a limit on the coverage. If you need $30,000 treatment or $100,000 treatment, it will be covered. Okay, no limits on coverage, no copays and no deductibles under the ISS. Okay, and it's a good option, in my opinion, to planify surgeries or expensive treatments. I don't want to mention the word cancer, but cancer treatments, open heart surgeries, back issues. If you need to do those type of treatments, it's a good option, ISS. Now, what happens is that sometimes you need to wait too much to go to see a specialist. Probably it will take 3 months, 4 months, because you need to go to see the general practitioner, get some tests, and later go to the specialist, more tests. Easily can take 3 or 4 months, okay? You can't choose your doctors under the ISS. Basically, the doctor that is at the office will assist you, but they have your clinic history, okay? Unfortunately, not all the medications are available under the ISS thing. Right now, we have the advantage and disadvantage from ISS. Let's take a look to private insurance. You have access to doctor appointments quickly. If you need a doctor appointment and you contact to your broker early morning, probably afternoon, you will go to see your doctor. Or 24 hours later, you can choose your doctors, okay? Basically, you can go directly to see a specialist without visit a general practitioner. To give you an idea, Dr. Tenorio is under the network right now. You can choose Dr. Tenorio also in the network, okay? Access to private clinics, you can go in the network. It's my recommendation. Of course, we can talk about that, but it's better use the network when you have private insurance. Why? Because when you go out of the network, sometimes can happen that a clinic or doctor overprice you, and the insurance company will reimburse you reasonable price of treatments. They have a reference for each type of treatment. To give you an idea, if you broke your arm and the doctor charged you $6,000, the insurance company will reimburse you around $1,500. Reasonable cost of treatments. Now, disadvantage. Private insurance have limits on coverage, especially talking about pre-existing conditions. You have under the Ecuadorian law coverage up to 20 Ecuadorian basic salaries, what is $9,500 for pre-existing conditions. Also, waiting period for pre-existing condition normally is 2 years. Then go back to the ISS, only 3 months waiting period, no limits on pre-existing or other type of treatments. But advantage and disadvantage. And also, sometimes you will need to afford extra expenses, also with private insurance, Now, what we need to consider to determine what's my best choice. How long I will stay in Ecuador? It's important to consider to determine if private or public insurance will be my best choice. Do you have pre-existing conditions? We have limits on pre-existing condition coverage under the private insurance thing. If you have important pre-existing conditions, probably a good option can be get ISS and combine with a supplementary plan with private insurance. Then If you need a doctor appointment, quickly, my private insurance. If I need some test blood work, my private insurance. But if I need an open heart surgery, I can go ahead with ISS. ISS will be my major medical plan and my day-by-day treatments under my private insurance. And I will show you how much can cost you a supplementary plan, and you will be surprised. Okay? Can I afford to pays? And I prefer full coverage. ISS full coverage. Private insurance deductible copays. Okay? I prefer faster service, or I can wait for treatments. It's important to consider. Okay? Now, many clients prefer combine ISS. Again, I can't sell ISS. This is just information for you. Okay? I do not have income from ISS, but you need to know how it works. Sometimes it's good to consider ISS because I do not have limited coverage. I have pre-existing condition. May I need expensive treatments then? ISS, but the main problems with ISS? Doctor appointments, medicine test. Get a supplementary plan that cover that part of your medical needs. In my experience, a $5,000 plan, you may think that it's a small amount, but appendicitis emergency, 2,000, kidney stone emergency, 2,000, broken arm, 2,000. A lot of medical needs can be covered privately. And if you need more, remember, you can coordinate. Coordinación de beneficios, benefit coordination, and then you can continue your treatment in ISS. The morning I talked about my father experience. My father had $20,000 private and ISS. He needed an open heart surgery. We started everything under private insurance. When we go to the limit, we continue the open heart surgery in ISS. He looks great today, probably better than me. But it's an example, okay? Now, let's take a look. It's very important that you get advice about how much is a reasonable cost for health insurance. If you go directly to the insurance company or a sales person, probably they will try to sell you the most expensive plan. $60,000 coverage can cost you for 65 years old, $215. But if you want to keep under private insurance, and you don't have important pre-existing conditions, probably you can combine two plans privately, a major medical one with a smaller one. Why? Because the major medical have $5,000 deductible. And if I got a supplementary plan that will cover me $5,000, basically my deductible will be covered, will be my cap, the smaller one. How much for a 65 years old person can cost the $5,000 plan? $60 per month. Probably a doctor appointment. Then you can get a private insurance and a smaller plan plus ISS, or smaller plan plus a major medical one. Okay? To give you an idea about ISS probably you will pay around $78 under voluntary report. Okay, plus 5,000 plan, $60 then. ISS plus private, $135, and you are completely covered. If you want private, keep private under private clinics, $164. A good plan for a 65 years old person. Then we are here to advise you. We are located in the Edificio Monte Carlo, Avenida Ordóñez y Los Cedros. We have bilingual people at your service. We can take a look about your current plans. We help you to deal with the paperwork, and then you can get the best choice for you. Thank you so much. We will be over there later. If you have any question, I will be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlos. And this time, it will be right. We are now going to hear from Johanna Pozos, who will give us an interesting twist on neuroscience and aging. Thank you. Johanna,
Thank you. Sorry that my presentation got in your way, Carlos. I'm so sorry. It's lower than that. Just, you're going to see a giant brain. There we go. Because, of course, I did neuroscience. I have to have a giant brain in my slides. Okay, so sorry about my typo I just saw there, but my name's Johanna. I am a psychologist and I do cognitive neuroscience. And I am part of the Institute of Neuroscience at Universidad Católica de Cuenca. So I'm going to talk here about mental health, which is one of those topics that we normally do not like to address. And that's quite common. So if you don't like to talk about mental health, that's okay. Nobody likes to talk about mental health. But it's important. So what we're going to do is, first of all, actually ask ourselves, what is mental health? Because mental health is more than just not feeling bad. It's more than just not having a diagnosis or knowing that you have a condition. Mental health is defined as a state of well-being when you can recognize your skills and your abilities. And this state of well-being lets us cope with the stress of life. It lets us make decisions. And if we make the wrong decision, we can still cope with that. But most of all, mental health is a basic human right. And normally we forget this. And we leave mental health as the last resource when all the other doctors have told me that I am okay and I don't have anything and it's a stress. And I am then forced to go to the psychologist. That's when we normally address mental health. And I agree with many of my colleagues here at the panel that have said prevention is the best option for treatment. And mental health is also on that board. You know, it's really important to talk about it because mental health will shape the world we live in. It doesn't matter if I have everything in life if my mental health is not okay. And that's why talking about it, it's crucial. So, why do we talk about mental health? It's quite boring to hear psychologists talk. So, why do we talk about mental health? And it's because there are many things that can happen, especially as we age. And one of those is loneliness. Loneliness is one of the biggest concerns for us as neuroscientists at the moment, especially for the aging population, because 1/4 of all the elderly population worldwide actually struggle with loneliness. And loneliness does not mean that you live alone. It means that you feel alone. So you can't have, like Dr. Edwin was saying, Ecuadorians, we tend to take care of our grandparents or elderly parents, but that doesn't mean that they don't feel lonely. Because sometimes we just show up for a Sunday lunch and then we leave. And for many people that have moved to Ecuador, that can also happen because it's a different culture. You probably don't know a lot of people here. And that cultural shock can make it very hard to build a community. And that can also increase loneliness. And those factors can also top up with things like the change in life activities. Because you might not be able to do things you like to do because you developed a health condition or you just do not have the space or that activity is just not popular here, so you cannot find it. And that can lead to the next reason. We can have cognitive decline. If we stop doing things, if we isolate ourselves or we are isolated because there's no community for us, that can actually have a severe impact in our cognitive health. And then we start with memory loss, attentional issues, motor limitations. And that also comes with a stigma. So I've tried to make it like a whole circle, but I'm sure I'm taking way too long in the circle. But there are a lot of myths about what the elderly can and cannot do. And sometimes it comes with the best intentions that we want to help, but we don't realize that we limit people. Because we just think, oh, no, you cannot do that. Or, oh, don't move, you don't need to, I'll bring you the cup of tea. And you can be just fine getting your tea. And that might be part of the few steps you take on a day. So sometimes people tend to limit from their own perspective, which is absolutely not okay. And a lot of this can actually make depression and anxiety risks quite higher. The elderly population has a very high risk of suicide by depression. And that is, it's a very, very different approach in the elderly and the aging population, because there are several ways that people think about it. Like, I'm just going to stop taking my medication. I'm so sad. I don't really care about my medication. And sometimes people just think, oh, they're old, so they forget. But if you forget every day, then that's something that needs to be taken a look at a bit deeper. So risk factors that we see, and we see this quite often, is social and emotional skills. This is human. This Dr. Edwin said this in the morning, and I would like to repeat this. We are a social species. We need the community. That's how our brain works. If you do not have a community, your brain actually works different. It tends to be higher in certain levels of cortisol or adrenaline, because you just feel as a threat, because you don't have a community to protect you. And this, if you do not have positive social interactions, that can also be a high risk factor for mental health concerns that we see every day in the clinic. We need safe and supportive communities. If you do not feel safe in your community, if you do not have a support network, that is a high risk factor. Because again, like you just said, who's going to take care of me? And if no one's going to take care of me, then I just feel lonely, and then it becomes a snowball. We need a supporting network, and we need physical activity. A lot of us probably do not like doing exercise. They were just talking to me about this at lunch. They were like, oh, Johanna, you need to do exercise. I'm like, oh, no. But sometimes we just don't want to, because we don't have anyone to do it with, especially if you're like more of a team person, or you do not find an instructor at a gym that can help you with language. Then you just don't. And again, nutrition and physical health come hand in hand, so it's really, really important to address those. If you don't want to take your few steps because you're sad, you're not going to want to cook. And if you're isolated or you live alone, it's a lot easier to go down to the bakery or order from the bakery a big piece of chocolate cake. But you can't have chocolate cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day of your life, as much as we would want to, right? So it becomes this snowball. So things we have to look for are this low mood, lack of interest. If you enjoyed something before that you don't enjoy anymore, you cannot actually find interest in it anymore. That's something we need to address, especially if it's something we're passionate about. Loneliness, again, is super important. I cannot stress this enough. Loneliness is the highest risk factor. Sleeping issues. Sleeping comes with cognitive decline. If you do not sleep, if your brain cannot rest, you have a risk of cognitive decline. You have a risk of depression. You have a risk of anxiety, because your brain is just exhausted. So chances are you're going to be yelling at someone, not because you're moody, but because you actually are exhausted and your brain doesn't know how to deal with things anymore. You might have a low appetite, so you just don't want to eat, or you have cravings all the time. You overeat. That can be related to anxiety and memory loss. Memory loss is a big cognitive marker. So what should we do? First of all, it's okay to ask for help. That's what we're here for. We're professionals. We're not here to judge you. We're here to support you and find what works best for you. Because what might work for me might not work for Dr. Tenorio, and that's okay. We have to find whatever is the option for you. And we need to talk to professionals, because that's our job. And we build networks among us to try to build a professional team to work with you. And we were just discussing this in the morning, the importance of having teams. We need to address the psychiatry factor. A lot of people do not like the psychiatrist. I get it. It can be a bit scary, but it's important. And we at Institute of Neuroscience have different options. We do non-invasive brain stimulation. I'm not going to have time to explain that, because I know that I'm running short on time. But if you want on the break, we can discuss that. But the most important thing is have a supportive community. that is the best you're going to do. Because living together and living in the community is going to be your best therapy. And that's all from me. But thank you so much for paying attention. And that's us. Thank you.
Edwin Urresta is going to give another presentation related to retirement in Ecuador. And I can assure you it is very informative. That will be followed by question and answers from the audience. So if you have any questions, have them ready. After that, then there will be a brief survey that we will ask you to take. And finally, the drawing. The prizes will be a psychological and cognitive assessment, and that will be with Institute of Neurosciences. The next will be Physio Slack, 2 sessions. No, 1 session. 2. I was right the first time. 2 private sessions and assessments. And last but certainly not least will be 3 days and 2 nights at Club Residencial, so you can get to see what we've been talking about, among other things. Thank you, and let us begin. Thank you. Dr. Urresta again.
Thank you, Connie. Fine. I'm going to go back again to a little bit about retirement in Ecuador. And again, remember, we're speaking of the situation both for expats and Ecuadorians, because this is the same problem that we're currently facing. First of all, as we were mentioning, I don't know if I said this here, it's estimated that 2 people turn 60 every second worldwide. So that means there's a lot of older adults, more and more. And we need to start addressing that and providing new lifestyles. In Ecuador, as I said, we're quite behind. You can see, for example, that we have 9% of the population, about 1.5 million, which is 60 years or older. Of that, 54% are women, 46% are men. 18,000 are 95 or over, and 2,700 are 100 years old or more. The situation, as you probably may have seen, is complex. Access to health systems is inefficient. It's costly if you go to the private sector. The public sector doesn't have enough resources, so it's quite difficult. Planning for later in life, is not common. People will just take things on a daily basis. When you get to a certain point, you haven't gotten prepared. The resources that government is providing for the elderly are minimal. And the vast majority of the population is at a socioeconomic level where things are quite difficult. Those are the realities. The private sector has invested little, if any, in this sector of the economy. And that's a shame because, again, it's cultural. We haven't addressed it. We are not realizing the need that is there. It's a great business opportunity. However, people have not yet understood the need to dedicate resources to invest. In Ecuador, this industry is pretty much new. It's nascent. We need to do a lot of work. And there's a negative cultural perception. People say, what? A residence for older adults? No. It's crazy. It's like if it were the worst thing in the world when it can actually be the very good situation. To give you an example, in the private sector nationwide, there are 60 residential gerontological centers. 60. And mind you, many of these are just simple homes for 6 to 8 persons, a home with a patio and a normal living room. So that's not ideal. There are 7 formal gerontological daycare centers, and we're speaking of proper centers with the facility, with the spaces, with the activities. You do have these homes where people can go and spend the day and be looked after, but again, like a storage room, which is not a proper center. And there are 79 of what are called socialization and meeting spaces. These are places where you can go, do activities, meet people. So what do we need to do? I think, first of all, as society, as service providers, professionals, and operators of these services, we really need to start creating awareness of the situation, the need to work together, to have national targets and objectives that can help us debate policy reforms, work on legal framework, and provide a proper environment for investment in the senior living industry. Building proper purpose-built facilities. And I can say Club Lomas is probably the first in Ecuador, which is a shame. There's a much more need for this. And here I would like to share a little bit about our experience in Cotacachi. As I said, Club Lomas is a new facility, and we've gone through several stages of developing the project and are now operating. But it's been interesting to learn how things are seen by people, how the expectations are met, how other people have different views. It's quite challenging. Spearheading something like this is not easy, but we know it's an opportunity and it's a need. The fact is that in Cotacachi, I don't know if I already mentioned this, in a population of 8,000 persons in the urban area, 1,000 are expats. It's a small town that attracts people in a beautiful province. These expats arrived when they were mid-60s, late 60s, about 10, 12, 14 years ago. And the first thing that many did was buy apartments, buy homes, or lots and then build, which is all good. But if you look at the situation, at that age, it's fine. You don't worry about maintenance, you're not worried about security, you're still fully independent, active, no problem. But 14 years have elapsed since the first groups arrived, and now they're going into their 80s, and all of a sudden there are more needs and there are more concerns. Having a house is a burden. Security, they're on their own. Lonely, and they have a lot of expenses, maintenance, and many other things. In case of death, those houses become a problem for their heirs that have to come to Ecuador or see how to resolve those things. So the thinking is changing. And a lot of persons there got together and they formed what were the health chapters of Cotacachi, you may have heard. And I remember they identified 13 critical items. 13. I don't remember them all now. But for example, one critical item, naturally, was emergency, health emergencies. Who can help you at night? Who can take you to the hospital? Who can take you to the right doctor? Major problem. Second, security. Living alone is a risk. There can be, people breaking in. It's a relatively calm, peaceful city, but still, there are always risks. So we're talking of security. We were mentioning someone that can do the cleaning and the laundry, and someone that can, take care of things for you, do the groceries, cook, and many other aspects. Importantly, loneliness, living alone. How can you interact with other persons? how to plan for the day you leave. Who's going to look after you? There were cases of people that passed away and people only found out a few days later because nobody knew that had happened. So those 13 items, which are very long and very well thought out, we remember working with that group. And after analyzing the project of Club Lomas, they said, you guys have resolved the 13 concerns. Because now a person can live well, can be looked after, have medical nurse station 24 hours. They have your medical history. They can take care of all your things. And funny enough, some people worried about the financial aspect. And they didn't realize that living in a home is more expensive and risky than living in a community. Because they said, okay, what is the monthly cost? We're at about $1,600 a month, all included, private Wi-Fi, Ethernet, all that kind of thing. So you really don't need to spend anything. So the first thought was 1,600, sounds a little bit high. However, they didn't realize they had invested $150,000 in their house, which if you deposit in a cooperative in the area, you get 10% interest rates in a year. So you've got to pay $15,000 of your investment to live there. That's $1,250 a month. Put 400 and some and you've got the full services. They're having that investment there, which is not producing interest. They're paying maintenance. They're getting a person to serve them and comes in hours or maybe 4 or 5 days a week. And it's costing a lot more. So I think people need to look at that, and Club Lomas aims to promote that discussion and to see that there are opportunities. What does it mean to live in a facility like ours, and which we hope will be replicated later on in other cities? You get quality lifestyle. You live in community. You have a purpose-built facility, fully accessible. A social club, gourmet restaurant, a nutritional plan, security, nurse station, assistance as required, and friends and community. And independence. Someone was asking me a while ago, if I move there, what independence will I have? You'll have all the independence you want. If you feel fit and ready and want to go out, this is for independent people. It's like living in a great hotel. If you need help and assistance, you can also get that. So it's actually a place where you can meet different needs, form groups, interest groups. We're just starting now. For example, there is an interest in forming an art club, not meaning painting, but rather promoting Ecuadorian artists. And a 2-year, what do you call it, biennial or bienal, not biennial. So things like that. And that's our experience. That's the message we want to send out. We want to share and that we want to discuss. I think there are a lot of people in Cuenca that say we need other options. We do. Maybe assisted living communities, independent living, home care services. We're also looking into that with a person from the U.S. that developed this industry in Tennessee, the first. And we're probably going to be bringing that type of services here. And maybe that's something we can consider for starters in Cuenca, right? So I guess that's our message, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Edwin, thank you very much. Okay.